I wasn't supposed to be home that early. The board meeting had been postponed last minute, giving me a few unexpected hours on a Friday afternoon. My first thought was, maybe I'll surprise Madison. God knows we hadn't had much time together lately. Between her constant travel for work and my own deadlines, we were ships passing in a very expensive night. I even picked up her favorite coffee from that pretentious little shop near her office, the one where they etch flowers into the foam like some kind of edible art gallery. I remember thinking how much she'd smile, how she might say I was sweet, how maybe, just maybe, we'd reconnect for the weekend. The house was quiet when I walked in. Too quiet. Her car was in the garage. One heel sat near the hallway bench, carelessly kicked off. The other, halfway to the stairs. That alone didn't scream affair, just laziness. Or maybe she was exhausted. But there was something in the stillness that felt wrong. You live with someone long enough. You learn the rhythm of their breathing, the pause in their laughter, the exact tone of their voice when they lie. I called out her name once. Twice. No answer. My footsteps slowed as I reached the bedroom door, ajar by just a few inches, enough to catch movement. Skin. Hands. A male voice. Madison's breathy laugh, not even trying to be quiet. And then the one word that ripped something loose in me. Ethan. My hand didn't shake. My mouth didn't open. I just stood there, perfectly still, watching the slow collapse of everything I thought we were. Her boss. Her fucking boss. They didn't even notice me at first. That's how deep into each other they were. My wife, Madison, arched beneath him, legs curled around his back like this wasn't our goddamn bedroom. Like this wasn't our marriage bed. I must have made a sound. Maybe it was the coffee cup hitting the floor. Maybe it was the breath I finally remembered to take. But Madison turned her head toward the door, and everything stopped. Her face, flushed from sex, went pale in a heartbeat. Ethan froze above her, mid-thrust, eyes wide like a kid caught shoplifting. Alex, she whispered. Like my name was a prayer. Like she hadn't just torn it to shreds. I walked in. Slowly. No yelling. No fists. Just calm, awful clarity. You know, I said, I had this whole idea in my head about how I'd surprise you with coffee, maybe take you out to that place downtown tonight. But I guess you had other plans. Alex, please, she scrambled off the bed, wrapping a sheet around her like modesty mattered now. Ethan started stammering some half-assed apology, but I held up a hand. Don't, I said. You should leave. He hesitated, like he thought he had a say in anything that followed, but one look at me must have convinced him otherwise. He grabbed his shirt and slinked out, barefoot, like the coward he was. That left me and her. Madison looked like she wanted to cry, but no tears came. She sat on the edge of the bed, sheet clutched to her chest like armor. I didn't mean for you to find out like this, she said. I actually laughed. Is that supposed to make it better? Her lips trembled, but her voice stayed steady. Cold. Businesslike. It was a calculated risk. What? She exhaled. Ethan offered me the senior directorship on the condition that I made myself available to him. He's powerful, Alex. You know how hard I've worked for this. I did what I had to do. For us. I blinked. For us. I repeated. Yes. For our future. There was no shame in her voice. None. Only this chilling sense of justification, like she'd just negotiated a tough contract and now expected my gratitude. You slept with your boss, I said slowly, and you're standing there telling me it was a sacrifice? She nodded. I know how it looks. But doors like this don't open without something in exchange. This promotion sets us up for life. I thought you'd understand. Understand? Understand that the woman I married traded intimacy like currency for a better salary? That she calculated betrayal and called it love? I married you, I said, voice low. Not for what you could earn or climb to or buy. I married you because I thought we believed in the same things. Trust, loyalty, each other. Madison looked down, her fingers knotting the sheet tighter. I made a mistake, she said finally. But I did it for us. No, I said. You did it for you. And now I have to do something for me. I turned and walked out. She didn't follow. I drove without a destination at first, mind spinning like a broken record. Eventually, muscle memory took over, and I found myself an hour outside the city, pulling into the old neighborhood where I grew up. The houses here were quiet, old but dignified. Familiar. I parked in front of the little corner bakery that still smelled like childhood. Down the street was the house where my mother used to plant sunflowers. 2 blocks over, the tree I'd fallen out of at 8 and broken my wrist. Everything here felt like it hadn't changed, like it had been waiting for me to come home. I got out of the car and stood on the sidewalk for a long time. The sun was setting, casting that soft gold glow across the street. And for the first time in hours, I felt something other than numb. Not peace. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of it. The townhouse I found was nothing special on the outside. 2 bedrooms, weathered paint, a creaky porch with sun-warped boards. But something about it felt right. Or at least quiet. And I could live with quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask questions, doesn't demand forgiveness, doesn't breathe your name in someone else's voice. I signed the lease the same day I toured it. Moved in with nothing but 2 duffel bags, a few boxes, and whatever dignity I had left rattling around inside me like loose change in a dryer. That first afternoon, the air was thick with summer. Cicadas sang in the trees, dogs barked in fenced-in yards, and every lawn smelled faintly of cut grass and old rain. I was halfway through unloading the trunk of my car, arms full of books and a toaster I hadn't used in 6 months, when I heard her voice. "Alex Carter, you got tall." The words drifted from across the street like they were being pulled from a memory, warm and edged with something older than time. I turned, squinting into the sun. She was standing on the porch of a white house with blue shutters and a swing that creaked slowly in the breeze. Denim shorts, a faded t-shirt, barefoot. Her hair was longer now, darker at the roots, but I'd know those eyes anywhere, hazel flecked with gold. The way she tilted her head hadn't changed. "Claire?" I said, half smiling, half stunned. She laughed, and it made my chest hurt in the best way. "I always wondered when life would bring you back here." I set the box down and crossed the street before I even realized I was doing it. She met me halfway down the porch steps, barefoot on the concrete, standing with that same easy confidence she used to have when I was just a kid sneaking sips of soda behind my mom's back. "Jesus," I said softly. "You look older," she teased. I was going to say exactly the same. Claire smiled, but it was slower than I remembered, more cautious. Her eyes flicked over me like she was trying to solve a puzzle that had waited 15 years for her attention. "How long are you back for?" she asked. "Just signed a lease." Her eyebrows lifted. "Really?" I nodded. Needed a reset. Claire didn't press. That was the first gift she gave me. No questions about Madison, no mention of headlines or scandals, or the screaming match that had ended with me walking out of my own house with only what I could carry. Instead, she just looked at me, long and slow, the way people do when they're trying to find someone they used to know underneath the lines and miles and choices. "You still drink sweet tea?" she asked. "Only if it's got enough sugar to kill a horse." She laughed again. "Good. Some things shouldn't change." She turned and walked back up to her porch. I watched her go, noticing how her hips swayed a little more gently now, not from youth or performance, but from certainty. She was the kind of woman who didn't rush anymore. The kind who knew her worth and wasn't trying to outrun anyone, least of all herself. "I'll bring some over tomorrow," she called over her shoulder. "And a casserole. You still allergic to green peppers?" My mouth opened, closed. "Then, you remembered that?" She gave me a look like she wanted to say, "Of course I did," but all she said was, "I remember all the important things, Alex Carter." Then she disappeared behind her screen door, leaving me with nothing but sunlight and questions I didn't have the courage to ask. That night, I sat on the floor of my mostly empty living room, drinking beer out of a bottle and eating takeout straight from the carton. There were no curtains yet, so I could see across the street, the warm yellow glow of her kitchen light, the silhouette of her moving around in slow, practiced motions. For a second, it felt like I was 8 years old again, sneaking out to her porch just to hear her read aloud. She used to sit on those steps with a paperback in one hand and a popsicle in the other, and I'd sprawl out on the bottom step with my head in her lap, listening to her tell stories about kings and magic and other worlds. She'd ruffle my hair and call me her little shadow. Back then, Claire was 17, babysitting for my mom. Too old to really hang out with a kid, but too young to tell me to go away. She never treated me like a burden, never made me feel small. Even after she went off to college and I stopped seeing her on the porch, I remembered the way she'd smiled down at me like I mattered. And now, 15 years later, I was here again, sitting across the street, watching her silhouette in the window, feeling something in my chest that I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Not lust, not even longing, Exactly. Just recognition. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of knocking. I pulled on a t-shirt, half expecting it to be some delivery mix-up or a neighbor with the wrong address. But there she was, standing on my porch with a covered dish in her hands and 2 mason jars of sweet tea sweating in the summer heat. You said I could bring this by, she said, but her tone was soft, uncertain. You're early, I said. Claire shrugged. I never sleep past 7. Comes with teaching kindergarten and owning an old house that creaks every time the wind shifts. You a teacher now? Kind of. Special ed aide. Pays the bills, keeps me grounded. I stepped aside. Come in. The minute she crossed the threshold, the room felt smaller. Not cramped, just filled. She set the casserole on the counter and handed me one of the mason jars. I took a sip. It tasted like home. I forgot how good this was, I said. Still too sweet. No, it's perfect. We stood there for a second too long, eyes holding. And just when the silence started to press in, she said quietly, It's good to see you again, Alex. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Yeah, you too. Neither of us said the obvious, that we both looked different now. Older, wiser, scarred. But beneath all of that, there was something else, something that hadn't aged a day. Something I wasn't ready to name yet. But I would be. Soon. I'd been living in the townhouse for 5 days before Claire brought the casserole over. A real one this time, not the introductory kind. This one was hot, fresh from the oven, wrapped in a towel and smelling like garlic, tomatoes, and some kind of melted cheese that made my mouth water before I even opened the door. This one's not for the freezer, she said. It's meant to be eaten while the top's still bubbling. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair was tied in a low bun. She looked exactly like I remembered her on lazy summer nights long ago, when she'd babysit me while my mom worked late and we'd sit on her porch until the street lamps buzzed to life. There was something about seeing her like that again, unpolished, unhurried, that did something strange to my chest. I was going to heat up leftover pizza, I said. Claire grinned. Blasphemy. Move aside. I let her in, and she moved around my kitchen like she belonged there. Without asking, she found plates in the second cabinet, forks in the wrong drawer, and handed me a mason jar full of tea before settling in across from me at the tiny kitchen table I'd borrowed from my aunt. We ate in silence for a minute, comfortable silence, like people who'd known each other long enough to skip the awkward filler. Then, casually, she said, You remember telling me you'd marry me when you grew up? I nearly choked on my bite. I what? Claire laughed. You were 8. Maybe 9. I think you had a plastic ring from a cereal box. You got down on one knee on my porch, dead serious, and said you'd marry me when you were all grown up, so I wouldn't be lonely anymore. My face flushed hot. Jesus, I forgot about that. I didn't. She didn't say it for attention. Her voice wasn't teasing, not really. It was soft, almost nostalgic. Her smile faded for half a second before returning in a smaller, quieter version of itself. I kept that ring, you know, she added. For years. Something shifted in the air. I set my fork down, suddenly not hungry anymore. I was a dumb kid, I said, though even to my own ears, it sounded like a weak defense. No, she said, shaking her head. You weren't. You were the sweetest kid I ever met. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was full, loaded. We both knew what we weren't saying, and for the first time since moving back, I didn't want to run from it. You know, I finally said, I think I meant it. As much as a 10-year-old can mean anything. She looked at me then, really looked. Not as the woman I remembered from childhood, but as the woman she was now. Eyes wiser, heart heavier, but still warm, still kind. I believed you, she whispered. And just like that, I remembered. That night. Her porch. The ring. I remembered how she'd teared up, how she'd hugged me tight, and said I was going to make some girl very lucky one day. I remembered how that made me feel 10 feet tall. Like I could do anything if she believed it. You were the first person who ever made me feel seen, I said. Claire's throat bobbed. You were the first person who ever saw me. We sat there for a while after that. The tea went warm. The casserole went cold. But the conversation, that stayed. She told me about her life. About losing her mom 3 years ago. About almost getting married once to a guy named Brandon who cheated on her with a woman from his office. How she'd almost sworn off love after that. How she poured herself into teaching instead. Kids who needed someone to believe in them the way she used to believe in me. And I told her about Madison. I didn't give her the full story, not yet, but I told her enough. That I'd come home early, that I'd seen something I couldn't unsee, that my wife had made a choice she couldn't take back. Claire didn't say much. She didn't have to. She just reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Warm, steady, real. I'm sorry, she said simply. The way she said it made me believe she meant it. Not sorry like pity, but sorry like grief, like she knew what betrayal did to a person, how it hollowed you out and made you afraid of your own reflection. You didn't deserve that, she added, quieter this time. I think I stopped recognizing her a while ago, I said. The sex stopped being about us. It became transactional, cold, like a performance, and I was the only one in the audience. Claire didn't flinch, didn't look away, just squeezed my hand and said, then it wasn't love anymore. We stayed there until the sun dipped low in the sky and the first chirps of crickets filled the silence. Eventually, she stood and stretched, arching her back slightly, a small motion, but it tugged my attention in ways I didn't expect. There was a curve to her I hadn't noticed before, a subtle softness that wasn't about age, it was about confidence. She didn't wear her beauty like bait. She wore it like armor, like truth. She caught me looking, and her lips curved, just slightly. I'll see you around, Alex. Yeah, I said, voice lower than before. You will. When she left, she didn't look back. But I stood in the doorway for a long time after, watching her disappear into the warm dusk, feeling something stirred deep in my chest, something I'd almost forgotten how to name. Hope. I knew she'd come eventually. The question wasn't if, but when. There's a tone to Madison's voice when she's decided something is final. It's clipped, composed, mechanical, like she's already edited the script in her head, rehearsed it with the mirror, cut out anything that might accidentally sound human. So when I heard the knock on the door just past 8 p.m., on a Tuesday, the same hour she used to beg me to pause my work and come sit with her for a glass of wine, I knew. I opened the door, and there she was. Still stunning, still perfectly curated, still wearing that high-end perfume that smelled like white lilies and restraint. Her hair was up in a professional twist. Her heels clicked lightly on the porch. I didn't say anything. She stepped inside like she owned the air around us. Like she had the right. You look thinner, she said, scanning me like I was one of her quarterly reports. You look the same, I replied flatly, almost like none of it happened. Her expression didn't falter. Of course it didn't. I wanted to come somewhere neutral, she said. Somewhere without Ethan. Or history. I motioned toward the table. She sat, smoothing her skirt over her knees like we were about to negotiate a contract. This won't take long, she said. Good. There was a pause. Not awkward. Surgical. Then she spoke. I know what I did hurt you. I'm not here to deny that. My jaw flexed, but I said nothing. Madison folded her hands on the table, one manicured nail tapping against the other. She didn't look ashamed, not even particularly guilty. I made a choice, she continued. Ethan offered me something I've been working toward for almost 10 years. The promotion, the partnerships, the seat at the table I've earned but never been invited to. I gave a humorless laugh. And all you had to do was fuck him. Her mouth twitched, almost a flinch, but she recovered fast. It wasn't about that. It was a means to an end. And what was I? A placeholder? A liability? You were supposed to be part of that end, she said, voice sharp now. The promotion meant more money, better opportunities, maybe a second property. All of it was for us. No, Madison, I said coldly. You didn't do it for us. You did it because you believed something I never could, that success justifies betrayal. That if you came home with more money, a better job, a bigger title, I'd look past the fact that you sold out your body like a fucking bargaining chip. That hit her. For a second, she looked human. Then it passed. Don't be dramatic, Alex, she snapped. You don't understand the pressure I'm under in that world. If I say no to a man like Ethan, I lose everything. If I say yes, I survive. I stood up, suddenly sick to my stomach. So you let him inside you because you thought that would keep you afloat? You want me to applaud your strategic thinking? Her eyes narrowed. I came here to explain, not to be punished. You're not being punished, I said. You're being seen. For the first time, maybe. And what I see is someone who believes the ends justify the means. Someone who rationalizes betrayal as ambition. Someone who... I stopped myself. She stared at me, jaw tight, but her voice still even. Ethan opened doors. You don't get to judge that if you've never stood in a room full of men who think your value ends at your neckline. I didn't respond. I just looked at her. Not the woman I married, but the one she became in boardrooms and back seats and closed offices with blinds pulled shut. I used to love her. God, I did. But now, I only felt the distance. The unbridgeable divide between two people who once believed they were building something. I want to try again, she said suddenly. That stunned me. Excuse me. She swallowed. I want to fix it. I'll end it. I already have, actually. Ethan doesn't mean anything to me. This wasn't about love. It was a move. And you already ended it? I cut in. Like that makes any of this better? I thought maybe once you had space, you'd see it differently. I do see it differently, I said. I see that you never really understood what kind of man you married. I thought I married someone who wanted to win, she said, eyes flashing. Someone who wasn't afraid of getting his hands dirty. I thought I married someone who respected herself. Silence. Dead and thick. Her eyes flicked around the townhouse. At the worn furniture, the single photo of me and my mom on the wall, the stack of unpacked boxes. Her gaze lingered on a ceramic bowl Claire had left behind 2 days ago, still drying near the sink. This is where you ran to? She asked, incredulous. This place is honest. She shook her head. You always had a weakness for nostalgia. And you always had a weakness for power, I said. She stood up. Her perfume hit me again. It didn't smell like love anymore. It smelled like armor. Like artifice. This isn't over, Alex, she said quietly. You don't just walk away from 12 years. From a life. I met her eyes, calm and clear. I didn't walk away from the life, I said. You did. The second you climbed into that bed and called it a necessary sacrifice. She didn't say goodbye. She just walked out. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt free. It started with a cabinet door that wouldn't close. I was leaning into the frame beneath Claire's kitchen sink, flashlight wedged under my chin, cursing quietly at a warped hinge and half-stripped screw, when she knelt beside me and said, You know, you didn't have to do this tonight. I looked up and grinned. I didn't have to eat your lasagna either, but I did. Life's full of reckless decisions. She smirked and handed me the screwdriver. The old house had its quirks. Loose tiles, creaky stairs, a back screen door that slammed no matter how gently you shut it. But it had character, too. The kind that couldn't be bought in a city high-rise or a freshly built condo. Claire stood and wiped her hands on a dish towel, watching me from across the room. I really appreciate it, she said. It's been like that for months. No problem. It's good to fix something I can fix. She tilted her head slightly, still thinking about her. I hesitated, then nodded. Sometimes, yeah, but not the way I used to. Claire leaned against the counter, arms crossed loosely. Her shirt had a faint smear of flour across the front, left over from the pie she'd made earlier, and there was something achingly domestic about the whole image. It hit me harder than I expected. Can I ask you something? I said. Claire gave a small shrug. You just replaced a hinge and 2 screws. I think you've earned one question. Why didn't you ever get married? She didn't answer right away. Her eyes flicked toward the window, out at the dusk settling over the neighborhood like a slow breath. The porch light flickered on across the street. Crickets began their evening hum. Then, softly, she said, I was engaged once. I sat back on my heels. To a guy named Brandon. We met at the rec center. He taught photography classes. Funny guy. Big laugh. Said all the right things. She smiled faintly, but there was no joy behind it. I thought he saw me. Like really saw me. He said I was different. But it turns out he liked the idea of me more than the reality. He cheated. With a woman in his office. When I found out, he told me it was because of me. Said I was too distracted. That I gave too much of myself to everyone else. I stood up slowly, wiping my hands with a rag. Jesus. Claire shrugged. He was half right. I do take care of people. It's what I do. But he made it sound like a flaw. It's not, I said. It's the best thing about you. That got her attention. She met my eyes then, something flickering beneath the surface. Uncertainty, maybe. Vulnerability. A kind of hope you learn to keep buried. He said I was always trying to fill in everyone else's cracks, she murmured. But maybe that's because I know what it's like to be on the other side. Alone. Unchosen. I didn't know what to say to that. But I stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough that she'd know I wasn't running. Claire gave a breathy laugh. You know, Yours was the first promise anyone ever made me, even if you were 10. I remember, I said. You gave me that plastic ring and told me you'd marry me, so I wouldn't ever be sad. I meant it. Her eyes shimmered, not with tears, exactly, but with something heavier. Something that comes from years of quiet disappointment stacked like bricks behind your ribs. I kept that ring, she whispered, for longer than I probably should have. I reached for her hand without thinking, my fingers brushing hers. She didn't pull away. I think I always knew, I said. Some part of me. That there was something about you I wasn't done with. Claire blinked, and for the first time since I'd come back to this neighborhood, I saw her falter. I'm scared, she admitted, of being a rebound, of being the warm place you landed after your life imploded. You're not a rebound, I said. You're the memory I kept tucked away even when I didn't know I needed it. We stood there in her kitchen, the silence thick but not heavy. Her thumb brushed my palm. Then, suddenly, she stepped back. I'm sorry, she said quickly, shaking her head. Maybe this is too soon. It's not, I said gently. But she was already pulling her hand back, retreating behind the wall she'd learned to live behind. I just need time, she said, to be sure this isn't nostalgia dressed up as something real. I nodded. Okay. She looked surprised. Okay. Yeah. Take all the time you need. Claire stared at me for a long moment. Then she smiled, small but real. You're different now. So are you. And that was the truth. We weren't the same people we were when I made that boyish promise under the porch light of her childhood home. We weren't even the same people we were a week ago. But something between us still felt untouched, untarnished. Like maybe, just maybe, not everything we lost had to stay lost. As I left her house that night, I passed the small garden she kept by the side of the porch. Among the lavender and basil, there was a single ceramic frog, the kind you find at a flea market, chipped and smiling. I stopped, staring at it, because underneath it, tucked between the stones, was something small, round, cheap, a plastic ring. The same kind they used to put in cereal boxes. The same one I'd once handed to her with all the seriousness in the world. I didn't touch it. I just stood there, heart full of things I couldn't say yet. But soon I would. It happened on a Saturday. One of those still afternoons when even the breeze seemed to tiptoe. Claire had just pulled a tray of blueberry muffins from the oven, her second batch that week. I was helping her fix the front gate, sweating in the sun, my shirt sticking to my back, smelling like fresh cedar and sugar. We didn't see her car pull up, didn't hear the door open, but the voice, sharp, unmistakable, cut through the quiet like a thrown glass. So this is where you've been hiding. I turned. Madison stood at the edge of Claire's yard, arms crossed, chin raised. She wore dark sunglasses and a tailored blouse like she'd just walked out of a courtroom drama, not someone's front lawn. Her lips curled into something between a sneer and a smirk. Claire stepped beside me slowly, wiping her hands on her jeans. Calm, grounded, unlike me, who felt like someone had poured ice water straight down my spine. Madison, I said flatly. Her eyes flicked to Claire, then back to me. I figured I'd find you with the first woman who gave you attention. How quaint. Claire didn't move, didn't flinch. She stood straight, one hand on the porch rail, gaze steady. Hi, she said politely. You must be Madison. Madison raised a brow. You must be Claire. The babysitter, right? The venom was there, dipped in sugar, but it bit just the same. Claire smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. Yes, that's me. The one who used to read to him on the porch while his mother worked late. Madison's laugh was a breathy, disbelieving thing. Well, this makes sense. Childhood nostalgia always makes for great therapy. That's enough, I said, stepping between them. You don't get to do this. Do what, Alex? She snapped. Ask why you ran straight into her arms. While we're still married. No, Claire said, voice calm but steel-threaded. He ran away from pain, from betrayal, and you weren't there to catch him when he fell. Madison turned on her. You don't know anything about our marriage. I know he looked hollow when he moved in, Claire said. I know he jumped when the phone rang. I know he apologized for things that weren't his fault. That's usually what people do when they've been broken. Something cracked in Madison's facade then, a twitch at the corner of her mouth. But she was too practiced, too poised. I see what's going on here, she said. Alex, you were always emotional. Easy to manipulate. I suppose I should have seen this coming. I stared at her, disbelief bubbling beneath my ribs. You slept with your boss? I said slowly. And you think I'm the one who got manipulated? Claire stepped forward, not aggressively, just enough that I could feel her beside me. You should go, she said quietly. This isn't helping you. Madison's eyes burned. I don't take orders from washed-up babysitters. That's when Claire did something I didn't expect. She stepped in front of me. Not behind. Not beside. In front. Like a shield. And for one blinding second, I wasn't watching two women argue. I was seeing something else entirely. Protection. Loyalty. The kind of defense you don't earn in a day. The kind that roots deep. Madison scoffed. Right. Hide behind her. That's rich. Claire didn't move. He's not hiding. I'm standing here because I choose to. Silence stretched between them like wire. Then, slowly, Madison took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed, glassy. You think you know everything, she said. But you don't know what it's like to fight for your place in a room full of men. To be told you're replaceable every day. To give everything just to stay visible. Claire didn't respond right away. Then, no, I don't know what that's like. But I do know what it's like to give everything and be chosen last. That landed. Madison's jaw tightened. Her hands curled into fists. But she said nothing more. Just turned on her heel and walked away. We didn't watch her go. I stared at Claire, the silence thick between us now. Not angry. Not awkward. Just full of something that hadn't been spoken yet. Claire exhaled slowly. Then, I shouldn't have done that. Yes, you should have. She turned to me, eyes searching. I'm not trying to be your rebound, Alex. You're not. I don't want to be a replacement. You're not that either. Claire looked down at her hands, still smudged with flour, a smear of sawdust on her forearm. She shook her head. She's not wrong, she whispered. Part of this, it does feel like nostalgia. Like we're playing house in a story that never finished. I reached for her hand. Maybe it didn't finish, I said. Maybe we just turned the page too soon. She looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw it. Fear. Not of me. Not of Madison. But of us. Of wanting something and losing it. Again. I need to think, she said softly. Okay. She stepped away, toward her porch. But before she went inside, she paused, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been chosen last before, Alex. And it nearly ruined me. Then she was gone. The screen door swung shut behind her. And I stood there alone, heart pounding, realizing that healing wasn't a straight line. And neither was love. The thing no one tells you about starting over is how quiet it is. Not the kind of quiet that soothes. The kind that echoes. I spent the next few days working on the townhouse like it owed me something. Replacing cracked tiles. Fixing the screen door. Repainting the living room a shade of blue that Claire said reminded her of early morning sky. Back before we got good at pretending. She didn't come by. Not for muffins. Not for tea. Not even to ask about the damn gate I'd promised to finish. I didn't blame her. Not after Madison's ambush. Not after she'd seen what she might be walking into again. Still, the absence felt personal. I tried not to think about her every time I passed her house, or when I saw her porch light flick on at night. I didn't check my phone waiting for a text. I didn't stand at the sink wondering if the casserole dish she left behind had been an invitation or a placeholder. I just worked. Paint. Hammer. Scrape. Sand. Manual labor had a rhythm, a heartbeat. It asked nothing of me but sweat. And in return, it gave me the one thing I hadn't had in weeks. Control. It was the fourth night of this self-imposed renovation marathon that the doorbell rang. I was shirtless, barefoot, covered in specks of primer. My hair stuck to my forehead. My hands smelled like mineral spirits. And there she was. Claire. Her arms were folded across her chest, and her expression was unreadable. I brought your dish, she said. I took it wordlessly. It was clean. Dry. No note. No warmth. Thanks. She didn't leave. I saw the paint from the street, she added. You're doing a good job. It's not done yet. Doesn't need to be. Sometimes trying is the point. I looked at her then. Really looked. Hair braided loosely, sandals scuffed, a soft crease in her brow, like she'd been thinking too long without saying anything. Come in, I said. She hesitated. Then she nodded. Inside, the air smelled like fresh paint and lemon cleaner. There was an old playlist humming through my phone speakers. Tom Petty, maybe. Something about free falling. She glanced at the walls, the tarp, the brushes soaking in the sink. You remember the night I asked if you meant it? She said softly. That childhood promise. I nodded. Yeah, you said you did. As much as a 10-year-old could. I waited. Claire stepped closer, her voice lower now. But what about now, Alex? What about the man standing in front of me with paint on his face and a heart full of bruises? Does he mean it? I swallowed hard. I meant that promise then. And I meant it the other night. Claire turned away quickly, too quickly, and I saw it. Tears. Not the messy, sobbing kind. The stubborn ones. The ones you don't let fall until they burn your throat. Claire. She shook her head. Don't. Please. I'm not trying to guilt you. I don't know if I'm strong enough to be someone's safe place if I'm still learning how to feel safe myself. Then let's learn together, I said. She turned to face me, arms wrapped around her torso like she was holding herself in. I don't want to be your Band-Aid. You're not. And I don't want to be the woman you remember. I want to be the one you see now. You are. Silence stretched between us. Then, quietly, she said, I hated how I felt after she showed up. Like I was back in Brandon's shadow again. Chosen last. You weren't chosen last, I said, stepping closer. You were chosen again. She didn't respond. I reached out, brushing her wrist with my fingers. Her pulse fluttered there, just beneath the surface. You're not some passing comfort, I whispered. You're the reason this place doesn't feel like exile anymore. Claire looked at me, her breath catching. Then she laughed, a watery, disbelieving sound. You've still got paint in your hair. I'm aware. You look ridiculous. So kiss me anyway. Her eyes softened. That's not how this works. Then tell me how it works. She stepped forward, close enough that I could smell the faint lavender of her soap, close enough that I could count the freckles on her cheek. I don't know, she said, but maybe we figure it out. Slowly, without pretending we're whole when we're not. That's all I want. And for the first time, she leaned into me, not out of impulse, not out of weakness, but out of something steadier. Trust. Her forehead rested against mine. Her hand found my chest. We didn't kiss. Not yet. But we stood there, breathing in sync, hearts knocking against old fears and new beginnings. And in the silence, something settled. The suburbs weren't glamorous. They weren't loud. But they had room to rebuild, to patch what the city broke, to remember who we used to be, and decide who we wanted to become. Together. I knew something was wrong the moment I saw her standing outside my townhouse. She didn't knock. She didn't pace. She just stood still, arms folded across her stomach, eyes fixed on the concrete like it might give her answers she couldn't find anywhere else. Madison, I asked cautiously, stepping outside. She looked up, and for once, the polished version of her was gone. No heels, no lipstick, no armor, just a woman stripped down by the choices she'd made. Can I come in? She asked softly. I hesitated, then nodded. She sat on the edge of the couch, like she wasn't sure it would hold her. Her fingers trembled when she reached for the mug of water I set in front of her, and for the first time in a long time, I saw fear in her. Not regret, not shame. Fear. What happened? I asked. Her laugh was hollow. I ended it with Ethan. I raised a brow. That's supposed to make me feel better? She shook her head. No, I didn't come here for that. Silence passed between us like a slow tide. He didn't take it well, she said finally. At first, he was quiet. Calm, even. Said he understood. That he respected the decision. Then the next week, he removed me from 2 major projects. Assigned me to a dead-end team. Word got around fast. She swallowed hard. He told HR I was emotionally unstable. That I couldn't handle the pressure of leadership. That my performance had slipped. My hands clenched into fists. Now I know why he always insisted we kept everything off company records, she added. No texts. No emails. Just whispers and hotel keys. I exhaled slowly, trying to tamp down the anger rising in my chest. Did you file a report? I asked. She looked away. Not yet. Why not? Because I'm scared, Alex. I don't have proof. And even if I did, do you know what happens to women who accuse powerful men without a paper trail? They become whispers themselves. Rumors. Warnings to others. I sat across from her, my jaw tight. I didn't come here to beg, she said quickly. I came because I thought, maybe you'd understand what it feels like to be cornered. Even if you hate me now. I didn't hate her. That was the worst part. Hate would have been easier. I don't know what you want from me, I said. Madison looked at me, really looked. I want you to defend me. Just once. Stand next to me and say I'm telling the truth. That I'm not crazy. That I'm not the villain. I stared at her for a long time. And then, quietly, I said, I can't do that. She blinked. Not because I think you're lying, I continued. But because I'm not your husband anymore. Not in the ways that matter. I gave everything to that title, and you sold it for a promotion. Madison looked down, biting her lip so hard it went white. But, I added, you should report him. I'll get buried. Maybe. But maybe not. There are people who will believe you. Investigate. You're not the first woman he's done this to, and you won't be the last unless someone speaks up. She was silent for a while. I was so stupid, she whispered. I didn't argue. I thought I was playing the game. That if I gave him what he wanted, I'd get what I deserved. That it would be a transaction. No emotion. No cost. There's always a cost, I said. Her voice cracked. I ruined the only good thing I ever had. She wasn't talking about the job anymore. I nodded slowly. Yes, I said. You did. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She didn't sob. She just leaked. Like the dam had cracked, and now the water couldn't be stopped. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said. I don't even deserve that. I just wanted you to know I see it now. What I did. What I lost. I stood, walked to the door, and opened it. She stared at me. You should report him, I said again. Not for me. Not even for you. For the women who don't have your voice. Don't let him bury this. She rose slowly, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. I'll think about it. I nodded. That's all I ask. She walked to the door, then paused. When I walked down that aisle, she said, I really did love you. I know. And when I slept with him, I thought I was doing it for us. But now I see I was doing it to prove something. To myself. To the world. And I proved it, she said bitterly. I proved I could destroy everything just to feel powerful for 5 fucking minutes. Then she stepped outside, and I let the door close behind her. The air in the room shifted. Not lighter, not heavier, just clearer. That night, I sat on the porch, the one I'd sanded and stained by hand, the one Claire had helped me pick the color for. She found me there just after midnight, her sweater pulled tight around her, a cup of tea in her hands. She didn't say a word, just sat beside me, shoulders brushing. And in the quiet, with no explanations and no expectations, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. Claire's dog was named Murphy, a shaggy, overly enthusiastic mutt with golden fur and a tail that wagged like a metronome possessed by joy. He wasn't hers, not officially. She was fostering him for a local shelter until they found a permanent home. He was abandoned at a gas station, she'd told me once. But somehow, he still believes people are good. Murphy was also the excuse we used for our evening walks. Not that we needed one, but it was easier than saying, I just want to be near you again. We walked the quiet streets around our old neighborhood, Murphy trotting ahead like he owned the pavement. The fall air had cooled just enough to make jackets necessary. Leaves crackled under our feet. I passed the treehouse today, Claire said as we turned a corner. Well, what's left of it? My chest tightened. It's still there. Barely. Looks like a raccoon commune now. But it's hanging on. I smiled at the image. That treehouse had been everything to me once. A castle, a spaceship, a place to escape my parents' fights. Claire used to help me haul up snacks in a bucket tied to a rope. She was the one who told me that fireflies weren't just bugs. They were tiny lanterns for lost souls. You remember the night I cried up there? I asked. Which one? She teased. The big one. After my dad left for good. She nodded. You swore you'd never let anyone close enough to leave again. And then I swore I'd marry you. Claire chuckled. You were so serious about it, too. Like you were offering me a real future. I thought I was. We stopped walking. Murphy sniffed a bush nearby, blissfully unaware of the emotional weight hanging between us. I used to think that night was the first time someone saw me, Claire said quietly. Not as the babysitter. Not as someone older or responsible. Just as a person. I looked at her, the streetlight casting a soft glow on her cheekbones. I didn't know what love was back then, I said. But I knew what you were. You made me feel safe. You made me feel known. Her eyes met mine, full of something aching and gentle. Is it strange that I kept that memory all these years? She asked. No, it's strange that I ever let myself forget it. We walked a little further, silence stretching in that easy way it does between people who don't need to fill it. Claire's hand brushed mine once, twice, then finally stayed. Murphy darted ahead, tugging the leash slightly. Claire laughed, and for a moment, I felt 10 again. Then 20. Then now. All versions of myself orbiting around this woman like gravity. Do you think we ever really stop loving our firsts? I asked. Claire raised an eyebrow. You saying I was your first love? I shrugged. I think you were the first real thing in my life. So yeah. She didn't answer right away. Then she whispered, I think I was waiting for you to remember that. A car passed slowly down the street. Somewhere, a porch light flickered. The wind picked up, rustling through the trees like it was carrying secrets. Why did you never get married? I asked again, though I knew part of the answer. Claire exhaled. Because after Brandon, I didn't trust my judgment. But more than that, I think I was still holding space for something else. Something unfinished. Me? I said softly. She nodded. I didn't want it to be a fairy tale, she added. I wanted it to be earned. I squeezed her hand. It wasn't just the treehouse or the fireflies or the plastic ring, I said. It was the way you looked at me like I mattered. Like I wasn't just a kid in a broken home. You made me believe people could be constant. Claire looked down, her voice suddenly shy. You were the only person who ever wanted to stay in my life without needing me to fix them. We sat on a bench at the edge of a park. Murphy lay at our feet, finally tuckered out. The stars blinked overhead. The moon was a pale silver coin, low and patient. You were my first love too, she said. That surprised me. You were a kid, I said. So was I, in a way. I wasn't in love with you, not back then. But you gave me my first taste of being chosen, and I never forgot it. We sat in that truth for a while. I don't know what this is, I admitted. What it could become. Claire turned to me, her voice steady. I don't need a label. I just need it to be honest. It is. And real. It's the most real thing I've had in years. She leaned her head on my shoulder. And just like that, it wasn't about rebuilding anymore. It was about remembering. Not just who we were, but why we still mattered. I didn't expect to see her again, at least, not like that. Madison showed up at my door on a Thursday afternoon. No warning. No text. Just a knock and the kind of silence that makes your heart brace before you even reach the handle. She was crying. Not her usual tears, the kind she used to summon during arguments, half-formed, designed to manipulate rather than express. These were real. Raw. Broken. I opened the door slowly. Can I come in? She asked, voice shaking. I stepped aside, nodding once. She walked in like someone drifting through the ruins of their old life. The townhouse was different now. Warm. Lived in. Claire had added a few throw pillows, a plant near the window, a small rug that somehow made the whole place feel more complete. Madison noticed. I could tell. I filed the report, she said quietly. HR legal. All of it. I turned toward her. He won't go down easily, she added. But I finally stopped protecting him. I nodded. Good. She paced for a moment, then stopped, facing me with a look I hadn't seen in years. Not since before the promotions, before the ambition calcified. I've been thinking about what you said, she whispered. About what I gave up. What I destroyed. I didn't interrupt. I thought I was building something that would make us bulletproof, she continued. Money. Power. Security. I thought if I could just get there, everything would fall into place. But I stepped on the one thing that actually mattered to get it. Her voice cracked. You, she said. I stepped on you. A long silence passed between us. She looked at me then, eyes bloodshot, makeup smudged. I'm sorry, she said. Not in that polished, rehearsed way. I'm really sorry. For the betrayal. For justifying it. For calling it a sacrifice when it was just selfishness dressed as strategy. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I forgive you, I said. Madison blinked. But not so we can try again, I added. She nodded slowly. I know. I forgive you, I repeated, because carrying the weight of your choices shouldn't be my job anymore. And maybe, just maybe, because some part of me still wants you to be okay. She looked away, biting her bottom lip hard. I ruined us, she whispered. Yes. But I loved you. I believe that. And I didn't mean to turn you into a casualty. I exhaled. You didn't turn me into anything. I let it happen. I let your ambition eclipse my needs. I let my loyalty blind me. Madison stepped toward me, like she might reach for my hand. But she didn't. She just stood there, inches away, caught in the gravity of all the things we used to be. I think some part of me thought you'd always be there, she said. That no matter what I did, you'd forgive me. Stay? I did for a long time. She nodded. But not anymore. No. Madison wiped a tear from her chin and gave a shaky breath. Will you sign them? She asked, pulling a manila envelope from her bag. Divorce papers. I took them. Scanned the first page. Her signature was already there, neat and clinical. I'll have them back to you tomorrow, I said. No rush, she said. Actually, no. You know what? Do rush. The sooner it's done, the sooner I stop pretending there's anything left to hold on to. I didn't have to say goodbye. The look in my eyes said it for me. She turned and walked out the door. This time, I didn't follow. That night, I sat on the front steps, papers signed and sealed beside me. The sky was low with clouds, the street quiet. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel free. I just felt finished. And then, like the universe heard the silence and answered it, Claire walked up the path. She wore that soft blue sweater I liked. Her hair was pulled back, her face bare. She didn't speak. She just sat beside me, her shoulder pressing gently into mine. We watched the streetlights blink on one by one. Murphy barked somewhere in the distance, probably chasing a squirrel or a ghost. I saw her leave, Claire said after a while. I signed the papers. She nodded. That's good. We didn't say more. We didn't need to. Because this wasn't about proving anything. It wasn't about revenge or rebound or rewriting the past. It was about acceptance. About choosing stillness over chaos. Presence over performance. I turned to Claire, about to speak. But she just reached for my hand. And in that simple gesture, I found everything Madison never understood. Love isn't earned through sacrifice. It's nurtured through choice. And tonight, in the soft quiet of a suburban street, I was choosing again. This time, with eyes wide open. Snow fell in soft silence, blanketing the neighborhood like the world had finally exhaled. It was the kind of winter evening that made time slow down. The kind that begged for thick socks, something baking in the oven, and warm company close enough to touch. Claire showed up with a bottle of wine and no expectations. I'd invited her over for dinner. No agenda, no hidden meanings. Just a quiet evening in the house that had, somehow, turned into something whole again. She stood in the doorway, cheeks pink from the cold, eyes bright beneath the porch light. You're overdressed, I teased. It's just meatloaf. She smirked. I dressed for the wine, not the meal. I took her coat. It was soft, woolen, and still held the scent of her, lavender, maybe, or just comfort. We ate in the kitchen, surrounded by small things that made the space feel like a home. The ceramic frog from her garden, a thrift store radio humming low jazz, Murphy asleep on the rug with his legs twitching from dreams. After dinner, we moved to the couch. No TV, just us and the kind of silence that had stopped feeling awkward weeks ago. Claire tucked her legs beneath her. I poured the last of the wine. So, she said softly, how does it feel? Divorced? She nodded. Quiet, I said, but not empty. She tilted her head, studying me. You're not bitter. I was. Now I'm just done looking backward. Claire smiled, slow and genuine. Good. I turned toward her, the firelight flickering across her face. I've been thinking about that promise, I said. Her brow lifted slightly. Which one? The first one. From the treehouse. The plastic ring. The one where I said I'd marry you so you wouldn't ever be sad again. Claire's eyes softened. You were 10. I meant it. You didn't know what you were promising. No, I said. But I do now. She waited, breath held like a question. I'm not going to promise you forever tonight, I said quietly. Because I don't think love is about grand declarations anymore. It's about daily choices. Showing up. Listening. Staying when it's easier to walk away. Claire blinked fast. I can't promise forever yet, I continued. But I can promise today. And tomorrow. And the day after that. I can promise effort. And honesty. And choosing you. Again and again. Without needing you to fix me or save me. Her hand found mine. And this time, I said, I'm old enough to mean it. Claire's lips parted, but no words came at first. Just breath. Just that deep, soul-level kind of understanding. Then she whispered, then I'll stay. She leaned into me, resting her head on my shoulder. I kissed the top of her hair, and the world outside disappeared. No thunder. No fireworks. Just two people sitting quietly in the aftermath of survival, ready to begin again. There were still things to navigate. Memories, insecurities, all the ghosts that lived between sentences. But they didn't scare me anymore. Because we weren't building something on illusion this time. We were building on truth. That night, as snow piled softly on the windowsill, Claire traced a small circle on my palm with her thumb. Did you really keep the treehouse key? She asked suddenly. I smiled. It's in the drawer by the sink. Why? Because I think that promise never really ended. It just waited. She leaned back and looked at me, eyes shining. No rings this time, she said. No, I agreed. No plastic, just presence. And in the warmth of that small, flickering room, something deep and permanent settled between us. A childhood promise had become an adult choice. Not naive, not accidental, but deliberate and real.